Hey there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. I'm your host, PattSun, and today we're going to be taking a look at r/cheating stories, where OP's wife is enjoying the attention she's receiving. Let's begin. My wife might be cheating with her friend's ex-boyfriend. Posted by Reddit user Det87.
Hi everyone. I heard it's very helpful to be here, and I hope so. I think something from my wife's past has come back to haunt me. I want to talk about it with strangers because even though I think my wife is having a physical affair, there's still a chance I'm overreacting. With everything going on, it looks like my wife's been unfaithful. Me and my wife live in Detroit and have a great marriage. About 11 years ago, I was visiting my wife at her parents' house and her best friend got in my face and asked me why I didn't put a ring on my wife's finger yet. While her best friend, we'll just go and call her Mandy, was grilling me, my wife wasn't stopping her, so I got the point pretty quick. Since I cared about her so much, I was happy they felt that way. After that I started to make moves to one day marry her. 2 years after that we got married and we now have 2 beautiful daughters. Getting married was one of my happiest days and I had always planned one day to be a good husband and father. My wife wanted a pretty big wedding and a lot of people attended. We even got some of our relatives from Puerto Rico to attend. Me and my wife wasn't rich, but we were good providers and our kids were always good. My wife was always a great person. She's smart, fun, and she has a great sense of humor, which you don't expect from gorgeous women like her. She was a good mom, and our daughters who are 7 and 4 years old love and respect her. Our oldest even acts like her. This is something I would always tell her. And she was gorgeous. I loved her pretty smile, her brown eyes and especially her amazing ass. She was the type of girl who struggled a little to put some jeans on, and whether it was in a sexy dress or some tights, it was visible on her slim figure. She always loved how she looked, and it caused my mom to believe she had an ego. She might be right, but I never really minded. I work in a renovation project facility, and my wife owns her own nail salon. This never surprised me, because she always was a fashionista, which she disagreed about. My wife was always up on the latest trends and had to have everything new. Whether it was the new iPhone, new heels, name brand clothes, she had to have it. This made me roll my eyes, but it was her money, so I couldn't say anything until she became a parent and it made her have to cut back. Instead of keeping up with the glamour girl life, now she focuses on our daughters more. She's now used to the last year model iPhone and cut back on designer clothes for Disney characters our daughters love wearing. The only time she wears her good clothes is on holidays or vacations. Even though that's the case, I had to splurge less as well. It doesn't matter because our kids are more important and my family is my priority. Everything seemed okay, but now I'm seeing problems after me and my wife ran into her old friend's ex. Me and our family was at the supermarket buying some groceries. Our oldest reminded about her Pop-Tarts and my wife told me to go with her to get her favorite ones. After finally making her decision on a new flavor, we came back out the aisle to see my wife laughing and talking to some guy. When my daughter interrupted them with the Pop-Tarts, my wife introduced me to him. She said this guy, apparently, was the ex-boyfriend of her old friend, let's just call her Tasha. At first, I couldn't remember who Tasha was, then I remembered she used to work with Tasha at some old job before my wife had started up her own business. This guy, we'll call him Trey, seemed happy to see us and was friendly to us, so I didn't mind at first. Trey and my wife caught up a little bit more, and it was awkward to see her smiling all in his face and seemed a little too happy to see him again. After waiting patiently, I signaled it was time to cook dinner, and Trey laughed saying it was good to see us. On the ride home, my wife told me how surprised she was to see him at the supermarket. She said she was more surprised that Tasha and Trey had broken up. I asked how long it was that she spoke to Tasha, and she said about 4 years. After hearing that, I had thought to myself that they definitely lost touch. At first, I thought that would be the last that I had heard about Trey, but as time went by, I noticed that Trey and my wife kept in touch. They would talk on the phone and also on her social media. He would mention me every once in a while, so I thought nothing about it because I felt included. They started talking more frequent and the conversations got longer, even up to after hours. But I started getting suspicious when Super Bowl Sunday came around. On the day of the Super Bowl, my wife was talking to Trey on the phone when I asked her a question. After answering me, a little while later she came to me and said Trey wanted to talk to me. Surprised, I took the phone and asked him what's up. He asked me was I going to watch the Super Bowl, and I told him I planned to. When he asked me who I was going for and said sarcastically the Lions. Laughing he said he was too and offered to watch the game with me. I told him that would be great, but we were going to have a bunch of kids over and I doubted he would want to deal with that. Laughing he said never mind and I passed the phone back to my wife. I thought that was the end of it, but as couple hours later my wife came back and said Trey wanted to talk to me again. He said if I could get away, there was a Super Bowl party a friend of his was having and I could go and watch it with them. My wife told me she would call her brother and tell him to pick up his kids earlier and we could go a little late and I decided to go. After he came and got his kids, me and my wife got ready to go and got there around the halftime show. While talking to everybody, I understood that the party was being thrown because somebody was a die-hard Cincinnati Bengals fan. The person who threw the party argued with who would win and wanted the Bengals to lose. He definitely got his wish, and the Bengals lost to the Rams, and it stopped the guy from being a loudmouth. After having a good laugh at this guy's expense, we all just enjoyed the get-together. It was, at this point, where I started to get suspicious because of how my wife was interacting with Trey. I didn't like how she was all in his face, and I felt left out in the conversations. I thought it was because I wasn't being social enough and put myself in the conversations more. At some point, I asked him about why him and Tasha broke up. Trey said he and Tasha was just casually dating, they weren't really serious back then. My wife laughed and said she was surprised because Tasha really liked him. After a while, said I had to go and get another Smirnoff and walked in the porch where the cooler was. After I was mingling with some people on porch, I went back in the house. Going back in the house I was looking for my wife and saw them talking in a corner. I was about to walk over to them, but I felt a weird vibe about how they were talking. He was a little too close to her and was acting all predatory with her. I paused and stayed out of sight to see what was going on. He held my wife's hand and she was giggling all shy. After that she walked into the kitchen and he followed her while looking at her ass. All I could say was what the fuck, but then I moved a little closer to get a good look in the kitchen. Standing by the sink, my wife was talking to some girl and her back was turned away from Trey. While talking to my wife, the girl looked at Trey and could see that he was looking at her. I think she told my wife, and my wife looked back and smiled at him. Turning back to the girl, she continued their conversation, knowing that Trey was looking at her ass. Usually, I love the way my wife dresses, but now I was feeling very paranoid. My wife would talk to the girl, then look back and smile at Trey as he continued to take glances at my wife's ass in her yoga pants. And my wife wouldn't budge, she would just look at him like she was saying, I know you want to do me. Even though they would try to play it off, they will go back to looking at each other, and you would notice if you were paying attention. All I could think was, I hope I'm not seeing what I think that I'm seeing. After the girl said something to my wife, she followed her back into the living room, and she ended up seeing me. She asked me what the guys on the porch was talking about, and I told her nothing much, and that I was ready to go. She said she wanted to stay longer, but I reminded her that her brother was still with our kids, waiting on us, so he could leave. After we said goodbye to Trey and everybody, we went back home, especially since we both had to work tomorrow. Riding back, I had to tell her what I saw. In the car, I told her it looked like Trey was trying to hit on her, and she acted like I was crazy. She laughed it off and said I was wrong. I left it alone, but I wanted to start paying more attention to them after what I saw. He was definitely looking at her ass. The more I pay attention, the more suspicions I had noticed she was acting. She always had her phone, she always brought up Trey to me and to her best friend Mandy. Then she started handcuffing her phone, talking all the way to early in the morning. One night, I asked her was she still talking to Trey, she just shot me a look and said she was. After that, she hung up the phone after about 5 minutes. After a while, I got tired of her talking so late and asked her to talk in the daytime with him, and her excuse was she talks to Mandy then. And when I told her it was really inappropriate to talk to Trey so late at night, she'd laugh and say I'm acting paranoid. Everything I'd try and say, she would dismiss it and say I'm worried about nothing. All my questions did make her stop bringing up Trey, however. I guess she thought it would stop me from getting all upset, but it didn't. 2 days ago, made me believe the worst. On my wife's off day, she said she was going over her friend Mandy's house to do her mom's nails. Since I knew about these a couple days ago, I really wasn't suspicious. Later on that night, my youngest daughter asked me if we could eat pizza, but I told her that her mom was cooking dinner. She made a big fuss about it, and since I was in the mood for pizza as well, decided to call my wife and tell her she didn't have to cook anything. When I called my wife, it went straight to voicemail. I tried again, and the same thing happened. I had to ask myself why the hell was her phone off and that this never happened before. I let half an hour pass and her phone still went to voicemail. After that, I decided to call Mandy. When I call Mandy, she actually picked up. I asked her, was my wife there, and she said she left. I said I thought she was going to do Mandy a favor and do her mother's nails for her, but she said she got a phone call and just left. I asked her who called, and she said she don't know, but she was mad that my wife told Mandy to tell her mother to come by her nail salon tomorrow. This surprised me because Mandy was like a real sister to her, and to hear that this happened was just fucked up. After hanging up with her, I called around and nobody called my wife, so to me, this left only Trey. I got so angry, I couldn't believe this was happening. At the Super Bowl party, Trey told us where he stayed, but I didn't know the address, only the street. If my wife was there, I knew he was doing her. After grabbing my keys, I was just about to walk out the door when I remembered my kids were still in their room playing. Grabbing my phone, I called my mom to see if she could babysit for a while, but she didn't pick up the phone. My best friend, let's call him Marcus, was my last option, so I called him up. When he picked up, I asked him what he was doing, and he said his girl was cooking dinner. I told him I was about to ask him for a favor, and he asked me what it was. I told him never mind, it was too big of a favor, but he asked me again, so I told him I think my wife was cheating on me. After telling Marcus this, he went silent, like it was the last thing he'd think I'd say. He asked me if was I serious, and I told him everything. He said that he couldn't come and watch the kids, but I could bring the kids to him. This pissed me off because he lived on the other side of town. After getting the kids ready to leave, it took about 30 minutes to get there. After getting to Marcus, he asked me did I know where Trey lived. I told him the street, and he looked at me like I was crazy. The street Trey lived on was a long avenue, and he asked me was I really going to drive all the way down the street to find them, and I said yeah. When I was about to leave, he stopped me and told me to go in his car. He said if I'm wrong and they see my car, my wife could call me a crazy husband, and at least they won't recognize his car right off. After handing me the keys, he told me don't do anything crazy in his car. He asked did I want him to come with me, and I said no, it's already fucked up he's involved. He took the kids and I made my way to try to find my wife. Hopefully I wasn't too late and I could bust her in the act, but I hoped I was really wrong about this. But my instincts as a man still bother me. After a long ride, I made it down the street Trey lives on. Slowing down, I tried to look for my wife's silver Kia. It was a terrible neighborhood, but at this point, I couldn't care less. All the suspicious BS my wife was doing led me to this. I was really hoping I couldn't find her car here, but eventually I did. Not only did I see her car, but I saw her, and Trey as well. She was wearing a pink sweatsuit, and Trey had on nothing but a white beater, some shorts, and some flip-flops. She looked like she was getting ready to leave, and I couldn't believe what I saw. I mean, the guy had practically no clothes on. And I didn't like how he was again too close to her. Driving past, I threw a fit in the car. I kept saying he fucked her, I know he fucked her. I didn't have any other explanation, except he was doing my wife. And I bet, magically her phone works now. Not only did I catch her all hugged up with this guy, now I had to try and beat her home. When I got home, I was surprised to see that me and the kids beat her home, with time to spare. After putting the kids to bed, I decided to wait up for my wife to come in. Almost 40 minutes later, she came in the door, and she was acting unhappy to come back. Looking over at me, she walked right past me and went in the bedroom. Her not saying anything really blew my mind. I walked in our bedroom immediately and asked why her phone was turned off, and she told me that she had never turned it off. She said her phone died and she had to charge it up. I asked her where she was, and she said she already told she was over Mandy's house. I told her Mandy said she left, and she brushed it off like she was irritated. She said that don't mean she wasn't there, and it just blew me away that I was going through this right now. I asked her did she leave Mandy to be with Trey, and she hesitated for a minute before saying yeah. I asked, she didn't say anything, and she told me it didn't matter. She said she's tired of me having a problem with Trey, and she just wanted to leave this alone because she was tired. She asked me did the kids eat, and I told her we went out to eat. Not even asking questions, she went back in the living room to watch TV and be on her phone. After that night, she's not the same wife that I knew. Now she doesn't talk to me, she's always texting on her phone in the dining room. And she always looks at me like she wants to get away from me, but she can't. This is bullshit because she's acting like I did something to her when all I do is cater to her. And whose battery dies in the middle of the day. I really don't know what to do, and I need to make a decision on my gut feelings. I don't know if she cheated, but her behavior has been a bunch of red flags. I hope I'm overreacting, but the signs are there, especially at the Super Bowl party. They've been talking all day, he's been looking at her ass at a party, and she allowed it, and now she's meeting up at his house secretly, he has to be doing her. I will try and update once I find something solid, but I really need to know if I'm overreacting.
OP, I'm not really surprised that she cheated on you. Based on how you described your wife, it sounds like she's just the average bimbo you can find walking around California. You know the type I'm talking about, the small waist, big boobs, big ass, always wants the newest phone, the most expensive clothes, the best designer bags. Wait, I'm just describing a gold digger. Because that's exactly what your wife is, OP. You said she was using her own money. That's just bullshit. You can't convince anyone that a nail salon that only has one location could afford the thousands upon thousands of dollars that she spends on these ridiculous brands. That is, unless she's catering to the rich, famous, and powerful, which I highly doubt. I seriously believe she was burning through your money. That or she has a sugar daddy that's buying her all the shit she wants. OP, you literally caught your wife at Trey's house and said that Trey barely had any clothes on. Sounds to me like she went to his house, had sex, and she was just saying her goodbyes when you saw them outside. If you are still doubting that she cheated on you, then it looks like the ridiculous amount of gaslighting that she has done to you over the years has really fucked you over. But you're finally waking up now. Lawyer up, get your shit together, and stay strong for now. There will be time to grieve later. OP, there is also another very important thing that you should keep in mind. Your wife is gonna begin talking sweet to you, apologizing for her so-called mistakes, and that she regrets it, especially when she learns that you are taking steps on divorcing her. Don't fall for it, OP. She doesn't deserve a second chance from you. Don't be a simp. Now, let's move on to OP's update. So before we continue, I just wanted to inform you gentlemen that I skipped a good chunk of OP's update because he was just repeating the story of his original post, and I really wanted to skip to the update itself. So I hope you don't mind.
I want to thank everybody for their support and honestly helping me. People here has been guiding me through this, and it's been helpful. I was going to post this weekend, but so much has happened that I had to post this update today. This is definitely a crazy time for me, and it's blowing me away right now how right you are about my wife. People here said it was going to get worse, and it did. Now she looks at me like I'm her prison guard and don't really want to talk to me. She only talks to her friends on her phone and don't interact with the kids and treat them like they're a chore. She just sits in our little dining room area and text. I didn't even know what to say to her. What was even worse was thanks to my schedule, I couldn't really stop her from cheating. My wife knew my everyday routine, and I'm sure Trey did too. Between my job, taking care of our kids, and obligations to my mom, they apparently met up while I was out. I know this because while I was out, I would try to call her, and she never answered. My wife's schedule was more flexible than mine, especially since my wife was her own boss, thanks to her nail salon. Whenever I got back home, my wife wouldn't be there, especially if she didn't have to pick up the kids from school. And when she came back, she'd be vague about where she was. This really messed with my mind and gave me what I think is anxiety. I would be with my mom, and I would be thinking of my wife riding some guy's meat. And this was ever since she left Trey's house that night. If it wasn't for this community, I would have been a lot worse. If I was blindsided by this, I don't know what my mindset would have been. But after I was told to calm down and start monitoring them for truth, I had to man up. After doing just that, I was able to get the truth and found out today that yes, Trey was fucking my wife. And my plan, it worked out perfectly. That weekend after work, I bought a VAR and put it in her car. At first, I tested it out when I took the kids to eat McDonald's, and it works pretty well. After that, I put it in my wife's car. Since it's possible he banged her in the car, it should pick it up. It should even pick up any talk or incriminating conversations they could be having. Doing this, I did feel crazy and couldn't believe this was my life. The most important advice I think I got was to act like I wasn't concerned about Trey. It was a lie, but I think I need to start getting used to it. Not bringing him up and acting like everything was good got her to ease up a little. It was hard, but I just kept my mind on getting the truth. When I told Marcus about this, even he thought I was a genius. A few days ago, I snuck out and got the VAR out of her car and listened to what was on it. I heard a few things, but I definitely heard her talking with Trey in her car. The one thing that stood out was when they were riding somewhere. The music was on, but I could still kinda make out what they were saying. He was definitely flirting with my wife and calling her sexy. My wife was giggling, and I couldn't make out what she was saying, but it wasn't stopping him. I heard him tell her to stop somewhere, and things got silent for a minute. Then it sounded like a bunch of guys got in the car, and they drove off. It got harder to hear them with everybody holding their own conversations. It sounded like she was driving them around to places. Through all their nonsense, I heard him say he was trying to come over. For a second, I couldn't hear the conversation, but I definitely heard my wife say to Trey she has to leave early, so come over. That was pretty much the end of the usefulness coming from the VAR in her car. They just talked and laughed, and one guy called Trey thirsty. After that, I tried to figure out who was my wife talking about when she said somebody was leaving early. I thought it may be Mandy, but even though Mandy was like a sister to her, it doesn't seem like she told Mandy about Trey. She definitely wasn't talking about her mom, so it had to be the girl who run the salon with my wife. It didn't make too much sense to me because there was a teenager learning to do nails there, but it was the best thing to go on. Nobody else made sense. I called up my friend Marcus to see if we could swap cars for the day, and he said yeah. After telling him what I heard, he was shocked, called her a high-price hoe, and said he hoped I catch her this time. Already knowing how I move, she knew to leave after me, and my mom's next-door neighbors helped her with her yard. Since I couldn't cancel on my mom, I told I'd only stay for a little while because I was tired from work. My mom blew down on me for leaving early, but then her next-door neighbor said he could handle it. Around 9, I pulled up to my wife's shop when it was closing. It's located in a strip mall, so it was possible to hide with the other cars there, especially since it was Marcus's car I drove. Inside, Trey was definitely there, and I was pissed to know I was right. Nobody was left inside except my wife, Trey, and let's call her Sherry. My wife was definitely dressed to impress, and Trey was all over her. I saw Ray was behind my wife, with his arms wrapped around her, while they were talking. After about 20 minutes, they really started to get into it, and Trey was kissing on my wife's neck and grabbing her on her behind. After trapping her against a wall, it was clear it was kissing, and Sherry just watched them. After about 5 minutes, Sherry must have said something about leaving, and they smiled and waved her off. Taking Trey's hand, they walked off to the back, where it looked like they were going down into the basement area. I've been down in the basement area when she first started up the salon, so I knew that was the only thing in the back. She was looking for a bigger place to run her shop so she could have an office space, since the place she's at now wasn't really high-end looking enough for her. If she doesn't know anything, she knows how to market something. I was so pissed off, I can't lie. I really can't believe this woman would do this to me. I did so much for her, and she would do this to me. And Trey was definitely a real snake. He never gave me good vibes, and I now see why. After I grabbed my VAR, I made my way over to the salon. Sherry had just got done grabbing her things, so I waited for her to come out before I made my presence known. When I called out to her, she looked like she saw a ghost in front of her. I told her not lock the doors and that I know everything. She claimed she didn't know what I was talking about, and I said I watched them the whole time. I called her a fat, lying bitch, and we got into a huge argument. She said don't blame her, that my wife was fucking another man, and I called her messy and to get out of my way. She said I wasn't going to be able to catch them fucking because the door was locked. I had asked her, why would they lock the door if Sherry knew they were fucking already, and she said they didn't want anybody coming down. Making my way in, pulled out my phone and called my wife. Apparently, Sherry decided to follow me in while I had made my way to the back. My wife didn't answer my call, so I surprised her by banging on the basement door since it actually was locked. I didn't know what was going on down there, but I knew if she didn't come up, we were over. After banging on the door 3 times telling them to come up, they still didn't come from the basement. Turning back to Sherry, I asked her how long she knew about this. Sherry swore she knew about Trey for about a month and that my wife started cheating with him recently. She said he came in on her break and after a while they had went down in the basement. She said the next day they would talk about what happened. I asked her did she know that was Tasha's ex-boyfriend and she said my wife told her. I told Sherry we had kids and she said she don't have anything to do with that. I said that's fine and that I'll be using what she said in court. When Sherry asked me what I was talking about, I showed her the VAR and told her she can go home now. Getting back in the car, I drove back to Marcus, who was a big help with not just the car but watching the kids too. I told him what I saw and he and his girlfriend consoled me. After that, while me and Marcus was talking, Mandy had called my phone. This was the last thing I needed, but I should have expected it. I decided to pick up and she said my wife told her everything and that my wife wanted to talk to me tomorrow. I told her to put her on the phone now, but Mandy said she won't let me talk to her now and she knew I was going to blow up on her. I told her I wanted to speak to my wife, but Mandy wouldn't put her on. Mandy said if I came over, she'd call the police and wait until tomorrow. She said she was going to make my wife call me and they both wanted me to calm down. I said yeah, whatever, and just hung up. After coming back home with the kids, I got super emotional. Not only that, my anxiety started kicking in again. I still can't believe this is happening to me. Even after I did everything right with this woman, somehow, I did it wrong. I thought after being married for this long, I was sure I didn't have to worry about this happening. The worst is that this wasn't a one-time thing, he was fucking her consistently. Now my whole world is going to have to change because whatever reason. I can't wait to see what she has to say tomorrow. I will update when I hear what she has to say. The ball is in her court, and if I don't like the way I hear I'm getting us a divorce. My mind is racing, and I think it may have been a bad idea to leave Marcus's house. I feel alone, but I had to post here since everybody wanted to know exactly what my wife was doing.
OP, from now on, you need to be very careful. Do not meet with your wife alone. Ask someone to be there. Not Mandy, definitely not Trey. It has to be a lawyer, OP, a lawyer. In her mind, she's already in court with you. And if you meet with her now, then she can just tell everyone that you hit her, threatened her, or some other shit. The exact same thing Amber Heard is trying to pull on Johnny Depp. So don't meet with her alone and always keep the voice recorder with you. Go to a doctor and get tested for STDs right now. Get your children DNA tested as well. Go call Mandy again and tell her that you are not interested in talking with your wife and that all communication will go through your lawyer. Don't let your wife make the rules of this stupid game, because then you will definitely lose, OP. If she wants to talk with you, then it should be on your terms, not the other way around with her telling you when to talk. The fucking audacity of those bitches to demand shit from you. They even threatened you with the police, OP. Take back control of the situation and your life. Stay in close contact with Marcus and get support from him. Tell your friends and family about the shit she's doing so that you can get more support while exposing your wife is a cheating bitch. Don't forget to inform the kids as well before she could manipulate the situation. Meet with a lawyer ASAP and do exactly what they tell you to do. You and your wife no longer share a common goal. She is working against you and will do whatever she can to make everyone believe that this is all your fault, that you are the abuser. She will tell people how you neglected her, you were abusive, you were cold towards her. Prepare for that, OP. Reach out to people and tell them about her affair before she can start to spread her lies. Good luck, OP, and I will definitely be looking out for an update. Just like how I'm waiting for you to directly support me, your host, PattSun. Viewer support is the best way for me to remain independent and continue bringing you these daily videos, which will always be here on my YouTube channel for you to watch absolutely free. So consider clicking that super thanks just below the video title, or you can use my PayPal in the description box down below. Thanks for listening, everyone. If you even somewhat enjoyed today's story, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, and if you really like it, make sure to subscribe to PattSun to never miss a future upload. Stay strong.